everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all doing well. It is very blustery here in Northern England. I can see from the chat that there's some very, very cold temperatures over the pond. My American friends are reporting very cold, very cold. Even Texas is 0 degrees. Wow. Well, we're going to get it on Friday, I think. They've forecast high winds and storms that are threats to life on Friday. So I think it's going to head its way over the Atlantic, probably pick up a little bit of momentum while it does it, and then it's going to hit our shores on Friday. -14 in Michigan. -14. Oh, that's crazy. +3 degrees here in Austria. So I don't know whether we're talking Fahrenheit or Celsius, but anyhow, we're here to talk about Sebastian Rogers again today. And I'm sure that many of you have seen the interview between the Law Lodge and SF Investigates. So I'd never even heard of the Law Lodge until recently, but I've not looked at Law Lodge's back catalogue. I've seen some of what people have, like when people have been reviewing his stuff. I did watch some of one of his videos on Sebastian and thought this information is months old. Like I talked about this 6 months ago. So I haven't honestly spent much time looking at the Law Lodge as a serious creator in this case. Because look, if there isn't any information that I don't know or that I'm not interested in because I've done it, I've looked at that, I've either discounted it or I've kept it in my memory bank somewhere, then I'm not interested. You know, I cover a lot of cases. I watch a lot of true crime and missing persons content, way more than I ever report on either channel. So my time is limited, and believe it or not, I do have a life outside of YouTube. So I do very much rely on efficiency, shall we say. That's why I watch stuff on fast speeds, and I don't watch very much of stuff that is old, that certainly that I consider old. But it does concern me a little bit with the Law Lodge. Not that I think there's anything necessarily wrong with the opinion that he holds, because he shares his opinion with many people. What does concern me a little bit is, first, he's got such a huge platform. He's got over 600,000 subscribers. So potentially his misinformation, whether it's deliberate or not, is seen by a lot of people. And also the way that he's come to his conclusions, in my opinion, is problematic. I couldn't watch the chat. I couldn't watch the chat. It was just going too fast for me. So I made a donation because it was a fundraiser. So once I'd made my donation, I just shut the chat down. I couldn't follow it. I don't watch chats like closely anyway when I'm listening to something, because I can't concentrate. But I do know, I have heard that there was a lot of problems with the chat, because I think because the At Night people have been promoting Law Lodge, and because they've taken him under their wing, whether Law Lodge meant that or not, he has been taken under the wing of At Night. He's considered, one of their camp, and because he's got such a big reach, because he has, nice camera angles and a nice studio and 4K cameras and nice expensive equipment, he's got credibility. He's got credibility amongst a lot of people. So again, 600k subscribers, but only 4k watching his live. That's less than 1%. Yeah, that's... I mean, look, when you've got such a big channel like that, you've probably gained a lot of your subscribers off, you know, a particular case or a few particular cases. So once you get, you know, like I've got, what, 80-something thousand subscribers, but I'm lucky if I get 10k views on a video. So that's only probably an eighth or a ninth of my subscribers watch my videos. And that's if I'm lucky. It's pretty common. Like if you've gained subscribers from a particular case and the subscribers who are stuck with you, you know, they don't watch every single video. They're only interested in certain cases. So that's not, that doesn't bother me so much. And also it will gain a lot of people on the replay, because people in Europe will have been in bed. So I watched it. But if you're, let's say, in France or Germany, it was going to be like an hour later. So it'll get a lot of views on the replay. He wasn't involved in crime before Sebastian. Okay. I haven't looked through his back catalogue. Do I watch To The Point? He's the male you, and he shouts you out often, especially on Delphi. To The Point. No, I don't think I've come across that channel. All right. So I'm going to play some selective clips from this live stream alongside about 500 other people who've already done this. But there's particular reasons why I've chosen these clips. And I'm not going to do them in order that they appeared in the live either. This is an example of why I've got a problem with the Law Lodge's opinion. It's the way that he's formulated that opinion that I've got a problem with. I'll do it like that so we can see Sebastian all the way through. That he's concentrated on motive. Well, you can't just concentrate on motive. So he has said that he has, you know, gathered his materials for his videos by reading transcripts, which, okay, if that's how he does it, but you lose the context, you lose the way things are said, and so on and so forth. But more to the point, just focusing on who has the motive and then doing your research based on that, you are losing so much information. So much information. A motive, as in why someone wants to do something, becomes absolutely irrelevant when you consider the opportunity to do something. Let me explain. Lisa, member for 26 months. This is a channel where you get your updates. Oh, thank you. So you've got means, motive, opportunity, right? The means is your capability to do something, anything. to commit a crime, to disappear Sebastian Rogers. Let's use Sebastian as an example. So do you have the means to disappear Sebastian Rogers? So means would be the physical capability. Do you have the way to get rid of him? Do you have a location where you can take him, where he wouldn't be found? Do you have the physical capability to manhandle him, to actually physically do the deed? All right. So, yeah, we could say, okay, there's a whole bunch of people who have the means to do that. We could say any of the family members has a means to do that, potentially. But Lola just focused on motive, which is why somebody wants to do it. What he has completely ignored, from what I can see, is the opportunity. And his theory that Chris and Katie are responsible because they're the ones with the motive falls down when you consider opportunity. So let's start with a clip. I know Chris and Katie have no motive. I know, but this is just Lolodge's theory. He's concluded that they have the motive. Therefore, he's set himself up into a nice little cushy confirmation bias state where he's just looked at the stuff that supports his theory. So he's not only fallen foul of, to successfully commit anything, you have to have the means, the motive, and the opportunity to commit any crime or to disappear anyone. You have to have all of those three things. You have to have the means to do it, you have to have the motive to do it, and you have to have the opportunity to do it. If any one of those fails, then you can't commit that crime. Not without, fixing one of them. The one that you can't do, you've got to fix it. And you've got to fix it in any which way that is successful for you. So let's say, for example, you didn't have the means. Well, do you know someone who does have the means? So would you bring in an accomplice, for example? All right. But if you've concluded that Chris and Katie had the motive, and then you go on to commit the second issue that he's done, is you only look for information that supports your theory. I don't know this guy's background. I don't know if he's got any background in evidence collection of any kind. I don't know whether he's got any science background or anything at all. I have no idea. I haven't looked at him as a person. But if you develop a theory, you can't just sit in your comfy state of confirmation bias and dig your heels in. And you could easily do that in this case. You could go to the interviews that Chris and Katie have done, and you could say, oh, well, that's conflicting. Oh, well, that leads me to, believe that motive is strong here, and this and that and the other. But what you fail to do is consider anything that refutes your theory. You don't consider anything that doesn't support your theory or might lead you in another direction. So he's fallen foul in the rules of investigation. He's fallen foul twice. Two very important reasons why his conclusions and his theory can't be relied upon as being reliable. Because he's only considered motive, he hasn't considered opportunity. And secondly, he's only, it appears, because he's got one motive and one person or two people in mind, he hasn't considered any other option. He hasn't considered the evidence that might refute his theory or evidence that might take him down a different path. Basically, he's been completely closed-minded. So this little clip here just gives me, just to show you an example of the kind of thing. So this is starting at the 1 minute and 7 mark. So I'm going to play a couple of minutes here, and just to, show you his discussion on motive.
I'm sitting here going, all right, well, what makes foul play look possible? So that's why I'm trying to get to the bottom of some of these things. And, obviously, like, that's with Chris and Katie, if he feels slighted, then that could potentially be motive. At the same time, there could
be Katie and Seth.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. If Seth feels slighted, then that could potentially be motive. In the same way that if Chris feels like for some reason or another Sebastian is a problem, he might have motive to do something about it. So I'm just trying to get kind of an understanding. So, but just come back really quickly to what you said about stuff Seth has said. Was it that do you have the screenshot? Like, could you share it?
Yeah.
If you use the share screen function? Yeah.
Well, I don't want to share. Can I email it?
You can email it over to us and we can pull it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, let me just say, while I'm looking for this,
go for it.
And that's totally, I get it. And listen, like I said, I go through that process daily also of what could have, right? Looking at it because I'm only following, like, I don't come up with a theory and then try and bend things to fit that. I change as like evidence. So then, in like scenario you were talking about, which is fair to talk about, if he was moved and would they find him? So you got to go through, okay, how would you we know he got to the house, right? We got, if we're believing that, if we're going to believe even Seth that he took the trash out, then how does he get out of the house to be moved? That would take like a vehicle and stuff. And who could have been involved? Because keep in mind, there's all kinds of digital forensics that, so, there's cell brights that have been done on, there's dash cams, there's of course the video surveillance, there's all these things that we know, her vehicle, onboard computer, like, so we know where vehicles were and were not, and when they were started and not started, and so then you can kind of limit down, like, okay, they didn't leave during this certain time. And also keep in mind that there's other stuff like and I don't want to get deep into this, I'm just going to give you a general thing, but I mean, like Apple Watches and stuff that show people so
all right, so
we can tell, just like you can tell what people may have done by those devices, you can tell what they didn't do either. Like if there's
it wouldn't stop. So SF is trying to explain there, and we're going to go into some of this in more detail. He's trying to explain all of the reasons why the opportunity just wasn't there. So even if Chris and Katie or Seth had the motive to disappear him, what did I think of Pinchot's video recreation? I haven't seen it. Is it out? I haven't seen it. It's a criminal investigation. Please show me the law enforcement update that has upgraded this, Valley Babies, from a missing persons inquiry to a criminal investigation. I'll wait. But Valley Babies, if you could provide that source from law enforcement, updating it from missing persons inquiry to a criminal investigation, that would be great if you could do that. If you could do that, that would be great. Do I think Sebastian had secret shoes? Yes. It's my belief he did. I've said that all along. I've said that all along. Okay, so Law Lodge appears to favour Chris and Katie because Chris needed to get rid of Sebastian. So it's, the disappearance has been masterminded by Chris. And presumably, Katie's gone along with it. But you could also include Seth in here. Because, some people think Seth has a motive to disappear Sebastian. as we talked about yesterday, a lot of what Seth has said raises eyebrows. If you didn't see yesterday's live stream, go and watch it, where I went into all of this. It raises a lot of eyebrows. There's a lot of red flags. There's a lot of issues with what Seth has said. It's like he's trying to get back at Katie. So if you believe that Seth had motive, then yes, you can find a lot of stuff of what Seth has said as being problematic. However, we've got to consider opportunity. And we've got to consider if one of these people engineered, masterminded, arranged for Sebastian to be taken away to wherever, destination unknown. How on earth did they pull it off? How on earth did they create that opportunity and not be caught on any of the cameras, any of the data from their devices, from their vehicles? All of it leads to nothing. So even if they had the motive to do it, they didn't have the opportunity to do it. And if they'd tried it, they'd have got caught. If they tried it by, we're coming up to a year. All of this stuff has been analysed, not just by random people on the internet, but by the FBI, by the Secret Service. They have been instrumental in, the FBI has done experiments with the cameras in the neighbourhood. The FBI has enhanced the digital data. So if you account for every single vehicle in that neighborhood, in that area, you account for their vehicles, like as in Chris, Seth and Katie's vehicles, you account for those, you know exactly where they were. You know no vehicles entered that neighborhood, and the ones that did have been accounted for and have been ruled out. How on earth did Seth or Chris do it? How did they pull it off? And the wilder you get, the wilder you become with your explanation, the less likely it is. Isn't it? Okay, so for that reason alone, and this is the reason why I've discounted the parents. This is the reason why I've said I don't believe any of the parents are involved. Not because I like them, not because I want to protect them at all. I don't know any of these people. I've never spoken to any of these people. I have no vested interest in protecting anyone, not on anyone's payroll. I have no emotional connection to them. I've no connection to them at all. So if I believe there was evidence to show that Chris or Katie or Seth could have done this, I would be the first one to come out and say so. But the reason why I believe that none of the parents are involved is because the evidence leads us away from it. There is an absolute lack of evidence, a complete lack of evidence that any of those people did this. And if they did, they wouldn't have got away with it. If they did, if they tried, they wouldn't have got away with it for this long. So, look, I think Seth is as shameful. Seth is behaved absolutely deplorably deplorably. I'd love to find evidence that Seth did something. I would, because it would vindicate my feelings towards him. But there isn't evidence. There isn't. Chris. I don't like the way that Chris disciplined Sebastian. I don't like some of the things that Chris has said. Again, I could easily have put Chris on my suspect list for that reason alone. But I don't have Chris as a suspect because there is absolutely zero evidence that anybody abducted Sebastian from his house or from his immediate neighborhood. So for those reasons alone, I don't believe that Chris, Katie, or Seth is responsible. Okay, so let's play some clips here and really get into some of these weeds. So I'll put it to normal speed just for those who don't like the fastness. So I'm going to play a couple of minutes here from about the 29-minute mark. And can't remember what this clip's about, but we'll find out together.
If this, and I don't know if it is, but if it's a situation where it's he snuck out of the house or walked away on his own, and he unfortunately hit a crevice or something like that, and this wasn't an abduction, then I firmly believe he's within 0.7 miles of that house still. I don't care how big the search and rescue effort was. I've been doing search and rescue long enough to know that people get missed because when we're searching, we're searching certain, we're doing hasty searches at the beginning, not grid searches, and those are have about a 40% probability of detection, 30 to 40%, because what we're banking on is that the person we're looking for will have the ability to also see us and call out to us. And
you see, and that's the case with any missing persons case, particularly missing child case. When a kid goes missing, it's all hands on deck to find them. It's a race against time to find them, because if they're out on their own in the woods, they've no access to food. They could get access to water, I guess, if they're near a creek or a river, but they're in danger. They're in danger from wildlife. They're in danger from exposure. And we saw from the press conference on the 27th of February, so the day before, the day after Sebastian went missing, Eric Craddock and Ken Widener did a press conference, and Ken Widener talked about his concerns for the fact that the weather was going to drop cold. So it had been warm on the 26th. It continued to be warm on the 27th. And then the night of the 27th into the 28th, it dropped cold with rain. So, somebody who's cold and wet is going to expire from hypothermia. No means to get shelter, is completely lost. They've no means to, try to work out where they are. And, they could be very close to home and still be lost. Very close to home and still be lost. So we know that was law enforcement's concern in that first week. But once you get over that first week and you in search and rescue, and you resign yourself to the fact that if they are out there, they are probably no longer alive, and it becomes a recovery mission, then they can, I guess you would say, take their time. It's not a race against time to rescue that person alive anymore. Obviously, you want to bring them home for their family, and you want to also find their body just to, for the autopsy to see what they died of, just to make sure that there wasn't a criminal element to this potentially. So you want to find their body for multiple reasons, just for common decency, if nothing else. But it's not the same kind of search as searching for a live person, because if you're searching for someone who is deceased, they have absolutely no way to say, hey, I'm over here, because they're dead, right? So they could literally be feet away from you, you know, down a hole or down a ditch or in brush, and be completely lost. I'll play you this video from Michelle Walks. I put this video on recently. Some of you will have seen it. This is crazy. So it's only 4.5 minutes. So this was a case where an old lady with dementia went missing, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. But I'm going to play you this just to show you how easy it is for someone to get missed who doesn't have the capability to help with their own recovery, with their own rescue. So let's play this here. A few days ago. Hey guys, I want to read you this article that came out a few days ago in the Daily Mirror. It's about an elderly woman who goes missing. She just completely disappears without a trace. This is yet another case that proves that people who go missing without a trace, the mystery is often closer to home than you think. So a woman vanishes without a trace, then Google Maps catches chilling truth 2 years later. So what happened was this. Marcel Tarot probably, was the sole carer for his 83-year-old wife, Paulette Landreau, who suffered from Alzheimer's. Podcaster Mr. Ballant explained in a recent video that it was a full-time job for Marcel. Paulette needed help remembering to eat and take her medication on time. Sometimes she would just wander off without telling Marcel, and he would have to go and corral her and bring her home. Well, my dad suffered from a form of dementia, not Alzheimer's. It was different, Lewy body dementia. And he used to do the same thing. He used to wander off and he used to fight. He used to fight my mother if she wouldn't let him out. And yeah, he would just wander off. Okay, so on November 2nd, 2020, Marcel left Paulette on her own for a few minutes so he could peg out some laundry on his washing line. It turns out to be the last time he saw her alive. So there's Paulette. Before popping out to do his job, Marcel sat up his wife in front of the TV with a nice lunch. He imagined that she'd still be happily watching her favourite show when he came back indoors. But to his surprise, she wasn't there. With mounting horror, Marcel went from room to room looking for his wife. He went outside. He searched the outside of the house, but she wasn't there. He even knocked on some neighbours' doors, but they hadn't seen her either. Anxiously, he called the police, and less than an hour later was relieved to see a search and rescue helicopter hovering over his home in Anden in Belgium. Marcel was sure that, one way or another, he would find out what happened to his wife soon enough. So there's the Google image that finally solved the case. Night fell with no sign of Paulette. Over the next few days and weeks, Paulette didn't turn up. Nobody had any idea where she was, and weeks turned into months, and then months turned into 2 full years. Nobody had seen Paulette. At that point, Marcel basically resigned himself to the fact that he likely would die without ever figuring out what happened to his wife. That's so sad. But an incredible coincidence helped solve the mystery of Paulette's sudden disappearance. The day she vanished coincided with the day Google's Street View camera car visited Anden. In 2022, one of Marcel's neighbours made the connection and examined photos of the street where the couple lived. So this is the street, and there she is, wandering away. In the pictures, Paulette can be seen walking across the street away from her home, while Marcel can just be glimpsed in the background as he hangs out the laundry. Investigators traced the route that Paulette appeared to be taking and finally discovered her fate. Across the street was a steep hill that led down to a thick bramble bush. Inside that bramble bush, they found Paulette's body. When that huge search for her was going on, very likely she was just trapped down there. She didn't understand what was going on, couldn't necessarily yell up to communicate with anybody, and she stayed there and died. It's just so sad. So sad that she was probably only maybe a few hundred yards away from her house. She was there the whole time in a bramble bush. Well, you know yourself, you know how thick brambles can grow. Near my house, there is an entire field that has been eaten up by brambles. You can't walk in it at all. The brambles are that thick, and they just get thicker and thicker and thicker year on year. You're not going to see down into the bottom of them with whatever technology. And you certainly can't send the dogs in there into brambles. So, yeah, look, so sad. But yet another case where the answers are closer to home than you think. I mean, that is just a crazy case. It's incredibly sad. But Paulette had wandered over the road. She'd gone down a hill and probably fallen into the bramble bush and didn't have the, cognitive power to work out how she was going to get out. And she could easily have been alive when the searchers were out there shouting her name. And she, was so disoriented and confused that she couldn't shout back. And she died there. Now, it's November in Belgium, so I guess it's cold there. She could have died of hypothermia. She could have died of, lack of water. Just incredibly, just unbelievable story, but yet it happened. And no one would have ever put the pieces together had it not been for the Google car going down that street that day and actually capturing the direction she went in. And no one looked in the bramble bush. And no one looks in brambles because you think, well, they're not going to be in there because they're so spiky and so thick. You can't even walk in there. Even dogs, like even Cassie, who goes into, tiny holes and she'll get through all sorts of places. She won't go into the field of brambles, the entire field that has been eaten up by brambles. She won't go in there because they're spiky, they hurt. So in Sebastian's case, he could be very close to home and have been missed. That's the point that we're making here. And once someone is either so confused or so unwell that they can't assist in their own rescue, or they die, then that hasty searching where you're not doing, piece by piece by piece, you're not doing a grid inch by inch search. You're doing covering a lot of ground quickly because time is of the essence, because you want to find them alive. So you're not looking in bramble bushes. You're not looking down ravines necessarily because you're looking for a live person who you hope can assist in their own rescue. That's why they were playing Sebastian's favourite songs. In those first couple of days, they were playing Eye of the Tiger to encourage him to come out. Let's say he was hiding and he was scared. He thought he was going to be in trouble, for running away and hiding. So they were, playing tunes that he liked in hope that at least he'd make himself known. And unfortunately, that hasn't worked out for them, has it? That hasn't worked out for them. Going to move on a few minutes to 33 minutes. I'm going to listen to this again. I'll make it normal.
Understanding scent tracker dogs specifically, I don't think there were any cadaver dogs brought.
All right, so this is about the dogs. It's strange that a search dog didn't even walk towards the brambles and signaled. Maybe it did. Maybe it did. We don't know that. And, you know, oftentimes the handler will override the dog. Oftentimes the handler will think they can't possibly be in there, and they lead the dog away. That happens. It happened in the Chris Watts case. If you've seen the footage of the search dog, I've got videos on it. You know, when I covered the Chris Watts case, I did videos on it. I used it recently in a live stream on Sebastian. Just to show sometimes it's handler error. It's not canine error, it's handler error. In the Chris Watts case, Cody the Labrador was signalling. He was pointing to the dumpsters where Chris Watts had discarded some clothes. And he was pointing over there, and the handler just carried on walking and then led him away over to an area that she thought they might be at. She didn't listen to her dog. She wasn't paying attention to her dog. So in Paulette's case, it's very possible. I mean, look, I don't know. I wasn't there. It's very possible that the dog went that direction, but the handler thought she can't possibly be in there. There's no way anybody could be in there, and led the dog away. We don't know. We don't know. Yeah, dogs are controlled by their handler. Look, there shouldn't be. I mean, in where you've got a search and rescue dog, the dog should lead. The handler should not interfere with the dog. The dog should be trusted to go and do their job that they've been trained for. The handler shouldn't try to second guess the dog. And handlers who are either not paying attention or who override their dog's decision are not helping matters. Didn't they use cadaver dogs also? What, in Paulette's case or Sebastian's case? I don't know about in Paulette's case. In Sebastian's case, yes. Law Lodge is wrong here when he intimates, and I think they go back to it later. I haven't got that clip lined up. But numerous cadaver dogs went round Sebastian's house. Numerous cadaver dogs. Cadaver dogs were welcomed into the house. It is absolutely not true. I know there's a rumour that's done the rounds that Chris stopped the dogs going in the house. That is not true. What Chris didn't want is a private handler to go in there. He said, look, law enforcement have already been in with multiple dogs. I'm not having some private handler that I've no idea who they are in there. That's the truth of the matter. Exactly. That's why you let the dog do the leading and the handler should just follow. Yes, sadly, handlers think they know their dog. And they probably do know the dog, but then they think, oh, well, you know, they recognize the dog's made an alert, but they think they can't possibly be in there. So they walk away, and the dog's like, okay, then, I guess I'll come with you. I must be wrong. But anyway, this information now about the dogs is very intriguing, very intriguing. So let's listen very carefully to this. So we're not talking about cadaver dogs. We're talking about the live scent trackers. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the dogs who were there in the first few days, who were there to track a live person. Okay. Yeah, I know. It's been noted that cadaver dogs did go around that house. But we're talking about the live scent trackers here. Okay.
Into the house. And then obviously cadaver dogs and scent tracker dogs aren't always the same thing. But
this shows his lack of knowledge. Cadaver dogs and scent trackers are not always the same thing. Of course they're not. They're two different. Cadaver dogs are searching for the scent of a decomposing body. So there's various chemicals in the body that are released after death. Cadaverine, putrescine, there's a bunch of them. Those are the two main ones. It's the scent of death. If you've ever smelt something dead, it's got a very distinctive smell. But dogs can differentiate between the species of the thing that is dead. So cadaver dogs are trained to find the scent of human decomposition. Cadaver dogs can be led astray because our cells are breaking down all the time. So there's small amounts of cadaverine and putrescine in our sweat and particularly in our excrement, right? So if a sewer pipe has burst at some point in the past and you run a cadaver dog over your yard, they're likely going to alert because the smell of sewage, like rotting sewage, could give them a false positive. In fact, it's not a false positive. It's a positive. It's just not a dead person. It's the scent of sewage. So releasing sewage into rivers and waterways can confuse dogs. They might alert. That happened in the case of Bryn Hargreaves, the guy from West Virginia. That all the dog alerts were around the lake, and that's why they thought he'd fallen in the lake or he jumped in the lake, and he wasn't. He was 300 yards away from his house down a small ravine, and everyone had missed him. I've got the search tracks for that. I've got the from the search and rescue. I've got the tracks, and you can see just how much of a coverage they did, and they just missed him for 14 whole months. And Bryn Hargreaves was found by two random people, two deer hunters, 14 months later. Came upon his badly decomposed body. Do you think if Sebastian was taken, would it have been someone he knew or the parents knew? Look, if Sebastian was taken, he wasn't taken from his neighborhood.
My understanding is that there were never any scent tracking dogs that were able to identify a path leading from the house away.
So
I know there was one dog, Max, but he was a ground disturbance dog, right?
Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. There's a couple conflicting stories about that. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know 100% what the real one is. I'll tell you as I understand it. So,
all right. So we still don't have 100% agreement on what on earth happened with the dogs. That's true. Everyone, including the dogs, missed Bryn. Yes, absolutely. Again, I'm wondering whether dogs went in that direction, but were led away because they thought, well, he can't be down there. He can't possibly be. I don't know. But yeah, everyone missed him. Everyone.
Originally, I heard it like everybody else heard it, that Max, because from the dispatch audio, Max's handler, he's on scene, and then all of a sudden Max is on set and Max is in the retention pond, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then we had heard that, and I do know that there were a few dogs, and now these were scent specific dogs. Mm-hmm. So Max is not scent specific. Max is he's an air scent dog. So he'll pick up anybody, he's just looking for the strongest scent. Now,
all right. So Max is the German Shepherd. Now, according to SF, Max wasn't scent specific. That Max was taken to the construction site in an SUV. So he wasn't taken to the house first and given a scent article. He was taken in an SUV. So I'm just looking for the clip. Do I have it? I know I have the clip of Max. I just don't remember what I called it. I'll play it from one of my videos. I didn't think to line this one up, but I'll play it from one of my videos. Is that the one? Yeah, here we go. On the clip of Max, and you can see him sniffing the air, and then he takes off at a run. That's the Chris Watts dog that was pointing. Why have I playing this from Granny's watching? I'm not sure.
So some of them did that. Max did not. Chris gave out bad information at all when that came.
So this is SF on Granny's watching.
9 did. The Bloodhounds, from what I understand, they did.
All right. I've got that footage. I actually have that footage. Where did I play it? Did I play it in a live? Possibly. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Here we are. Right, so let's start this at the beginning. So this is the construction site. And how crazy is it that they never shut down this construction site? It's absolutely insane. So much evidence potentially could have been lost. But anyway, we see Max over here. He's coming now. Right in this corner. Here he is. Right, so watch him. So he's sniffing the air, and then he just sets off at a trot. He sets off a trot in this direction and goes up this hill. So he sniffs something. You see his handler still there. But you see Max coming through, off at a trot. And that's where he dives into the retention pond. The retention pond is up here, just off this camera. So, according to SF, Max is a live scent tracker, but he's not a scent-specific live scent tracker. Certainly not in this case. So he's taken to the construction site in an SUV. He's let out. He wanders around here. He has his nose in the air. So he's sniffing for scent in the air. And then he takes off at a trot along here. All right. And jumps into the retention pond. So we know that's true because that's captured on the dispatch audio. So we now have the evidence of Max getting a scent somewhere along here and then taking off at a trot and jumping into the retention pond. SF doesn't believe that the scent that Max got was Sebastian. What these non-specific live scent trackers do is they find the strongest scent that isn't their handler or any member of their party. But my argument would be, if it's not Sebastian, who was Max tracking? If it's not Sebastian, who was it? If it's not Sebastian, who left a strong scent down here and inspired Max to set off at a trot and dive into the pond? If it's not Sebastian, who is it? I need the answer to that. Now, this camera is a house on Kelling that backs onto the construction site. And it's next, I don't know whether it's next door to Bobby's or it's on the same row as Bobby's anyway. So that's Max. All right.
Between the two, so we're covering more area quick.
Wrong one. This one.
Scent specific, meaning they have taken a scent article from Sebastian. So a trained handler will go in there with a paper bag and collect a scent article, usually a pillowcase or underwear or socks or something. And then they'll scent the dog, and then the dog will, be dosed.
So by scent the dog, they just give the dog the bag, let the dog sniff the bag inside the bag for a sec. They just need a second. They just need a second, and they think, right, that's the scent that I need to go and find. They know their job. That's the scent I need to go and find. So there were numerous live scent trackers who were given a scent of Sebastian's. So numerous of these dogs.
Down and as opposed to up in the air like an air scent, and we'll try and trail that. And so there was dogs that went out the front door to the left along the fence line. So it would be along their fence line, but there's a house over there, and then back up the fence line, kind of like it was coming back. Mm-hmm. And then cuts across the neighbor's yard where there's no fence.
All right, so several dogs did that. Now we've heard that from Chris. So I don't know whether SF has any of this on camera, or whether he's also heard it from Chris, or potentially he's heard it from one of the handlers. However, Chris went a little bit further. In a phone call with Narked Divers, Chris said that a bloodhound, a blue tick coonhound, so this was on the same day that Sebastian went missing, a bloodhound, a blue tick coonhound, and then another dog a few days later, did exactly what SF just said there, went down the back fence, came back, and then went diagonally across the neighbour's yard. But Chris extends that by saying the dogs then went up Kelling and then went to the construction site. So Chris gives like this full track between the front door and the construction site. SF, in reviewing the camera footage, doesn't appear to believe that the dogs made such a direct track, which is potentially a problem. However, I have talked about this in a recent live stream, and I'll talk about it again in a second, but let's let him carry on here.
So from that point, now that's what that's what was visualized of the canines doing. Okay. So you can assume that's what they're doing. Now from there.
Well, that's what was visualized. So Chris actually saw them do this. Now, again, I don't know whether SF has got any independent corroboration of that. Chris was speaking to a number of the handlers. So Chris believes that the dogs went to some of the dogs went to the construction site. But SF, in reviewing the cameras, doesn't believe that to be the case.
Once they're out of eyesight, we don't know, but we thought that they went up Kellen and also tracked to the retention pond.
Mm-hmm.
However,
so that's what Chris thought, because that's what he'd been told by some of the handlers. But could it be the case that some dogs did do that? Yeah. But what SF has done has gone to the camera footage. He's got over 100 hours of camera footage from the neighborhood, from numerous cameras in the neighborhood. So in a nutshell, all we know is Sebastian is missing, period. Yeah. Yeah. But I think the dogs did have a track. I don't believe the dogs had one consistent track, but I do believe the dogs found Sebastian's scent out there. I do. For the reasons I'm going to talk about in a minute.
In the last month, things have changed as far as that goes, because I've got all the surveillance footage. I can see 20 for full. These are not like detection cameras. These were 24-hour rolling cameras. So I can see everything goes on. Now Max is driven up in an SUV to the construction site, and then he gets out. He actually goes to one of the neighbors' yards for a second, and then they're just kind of like working around. He does end up on the other end over the retention pond. Then about 2 p.m., the first bloodhound, which is, I'm going to say, the first search and rescue dog that I see.
All right, so at 2 p.m., based on the surveillance camera footage that SF has got, the first bloodhound is on scene. Now, it doesn't mean to say that SF has got camera footage from the entire neighborhood. He's collected over 100 hours of footage that covers a lot of the neighborhood, but we don't know. I haven't seen this footage. I don't know how much of that neighborhood is actually covered. What was the address? The address of the camera that was on this one, this house at the back of Kellen. I don't know the number. I know that it's at the top of Kellen. It's one of the houses at the top of Kellen that backs onto the construction site. I don't know the number of the house, though. I've got so many clips. I'm hoping I'm showing you the right one. Yeah, I am.
Anyways, comes up. Now, I thought search and rescue dog came up Kellen and, then right into the construction area, but that's not what happened. The bloodhound actually came up, was already from down below, was already inside the new development and was walking along the fence line that separates the two, and walked all the way up to the top, essentially parallel with Kellen, but it was clear it was not on he was not on a set. He does deviate. There's one area where he deviates hard left 90 degrees and goes down a hill.
Now that is interesting, because it appears not all the dogs were started at the house. Now, Chris said on the first day he saw 2 bloodhounds, a blue tick coonhound, a Belgian Malinois. I think that was it. So 2 bloodhounds, a blue tick coonhound, a Belgian Malinois, and maybe another one. Chris saw 5 dogs. But it was one of the bloodhounds and the blue tick coonhound that went from the front door. Now, what it appears is that not all the dogs started at the house. I think they were running the dogs. Ken Widener, I think this was the 29th of February press conference. He said that they started the dogs at intersections to see if they would take them in a direction, and they didn't get anything from that. But Ken Widener also said that they did get some tracks away from the house. So what I would have done if I'd have been a handler I would have wanted my dog to start at the house. Starting your dog elsewhere, what's the point? Now, okay, so if they've got absolutely no idea what direction Sebastian went in, I get it. That start your dog at an intersection to see if it'll take you in a particular direction. So at least they can, they've got a direction to follow. I get that. I get that. But I would have wanted to start my dog at the house. So the dogs that did start at the house, those are the dogs that went down the back fence, came back up. So I would argue, therefore, that Sebastian walked down the side of the back fence. The track stops, so the dog stops, and then Sebastian walks back up. So the dog comes back to find the scent again, and then goes diagonally across the backyard of the neighbour onto Kellen. And then at that point, the visual's lost. So then Chris relied on what the handlers told him. The dogs that started elsewhere, yes, they may have picked up scent, but they're not going to get a consistent track. Because this dog, this bloodhound that SF saw, did this hard left and then kind of followed this track down a hill. Well, I want to know more about that. I want to know why that dog took that hard left. Like the dog is just like wandering about, sniffing about, isn't on a track, and then just takes a hard left. Takes a hard left. Well, where did that go? The construction site absolutely should have been closed. Without a shadow of a doubt. I assumed it was. I'd made the assumption that it was, at least on the 26th of February, while they searched it. But no, throughout the entire day, that construction site carried on. How much evidence was lost? Now, here's the issue that I've got. Here's the issue that I've got with these dogs. And I've talked about this many, many times before, not just in this case, but in many cases, that you've got lots of different surfaces. So the dogs that were seen, the dogs that started at the house, came out the front door. So started at the front door, which is here. Turned a left, down the back fence, which is here. Came back. So the scent's lost, came back, and then went diagonally across this neighbour's yard. So presumably following the line of this ditch, I don't know. It may have gone that way, I don't know. But went on to Kellen. And then, according to Chris, handlers told him that they went up Kellen and then onto the construction site. Max starts here, somewhere here, top of Kellen. And you see him going along here at a trot. And then you kind of lose him on the camera. So these dogs that started at the house, are on grass. Grass holds scent. Bloodhounds, coonhounds, those dogs track with their noses down. So the scent falls, it's in the air at first, it falls down onto the ground. And when it's on a natural surface like grass or mud, then it can bed in. A lot of that scent can remain there for days, for many days. But when you get onto a road, this is an artificial surface. Scent can't lay down and bed in like it can on grass or mud. So it's lost very quickly. So a dog gets gets from the grass to the artificial surface, they're going to lose the scent because the dog is, yes, it's following a particular scent that's been given, but it's using its natural instinct. And in the natural world, scent gets stronger. As you get closer and closer to your prey, the scent gets stronger. If the scent suddenly gets weaker, the dog gets confused. So what I would have liked to have done, if I was a dog handler, and I'd lost the scent here, I would have liked to walk up a little way and restart my dog. Walk up a little way and restart my dog. to see whether the dog could pick up that scent again. Because what happens is, dependent on things like wind direction, wind speed, scent can pool. So scent can pool in areas where you've got, let's say, trees, or you've got like basically area where scent can be blown, and then it can bed in. So I would have wanted to keep restarting my dog to try to find whether there was a direction of a track. Now, maybe that's what was done. I don't know. But based on the information that SF has, he doesn't seem to believe that there was one consistent track, which is consistent with what Ken Widener said, that they did get some tracks away from the house, but none of them led to Sebastian. There's another issue as well, that Sebastian may not have just taken one route. Sebastian may have been all over the place. Sebastian may have not walked down the back fence, back up across the neighbour's yard, up Kelling and onto the construction site. Sebastian might have been messing about all over the place. In which case, he's crossing over his own tracks. In which case, it's all strong scent to a dog because it's all laid down at the same time, but it's all over the place. It's like crisscrossing and he's to and fro. We don't know why Sebastian was out there. Was Sebastian playing flashlight tag? Was Sebastian out there playing a game with someone? Was Sebastian out there exploring? Was Sebastian out there following cats? He loved cats. Was he out there looking for cats? So to the dogs, if Sebastian comes out here and then he's up here and then he's down here and then he's across here and then he's back down here, those tracks are all over the place, and it's going to make a dog go all over the place. So you can't blame the dogs when somebody is running here, there and everywhere. When those dogs are sniffing the ground, when those dogs are nose down workers like bloodhounds and coonhounds, spaniels work the same. Was Sebastian going out most nights? I think he was. I think he was out and about way more than they knew. Yeah, he was described as a good hider and a long runner. Absolutely. And I've not got the clip, but in this interview, in this very interview, it's towards the end for anybody who wants to go and find it. SF gives a little bit more detail to the occasion where he was found hiding under a neighbour's car. We heard it on the dispatch audio. Well, SF has been and spoke to that neighbour, and what happened was, it was around 4 p.m. and it was the neighbour's son's girlfriend. So we heard it was the neighbour's son's vehicle. It wasn't. It was his girlfriend's vehicle. So she comes out and finds Sebastian under her vehicle. When he sees her, he runs away. So she goes in to tell the neighbour, so her boyfriend's dad. Her boyfriend's dad goes over to Sebastian's house, like he knows who Sebastian is, goes over to Sebastian's house, and there's no one in because Katie wasn't home yet. Katie was at work. So while Katie was at work, Sebastian's got home from school and he's gone walkabout. And he's hiding under people's vehicles. Now, nobody's suggesting he was up to anything nefarious. He was just probably playing a game. He likes hiding. So he probably thought it was funny to go and hide under a car. Maybe he planned to jump out at someone, who knows? But then once he got found out, he ran. He legged it. It is dangerous. It is dangerous. My aunt and uncle's cat died because of that. She used to like going under cars. And one day, my uncle drove off and squashed her because she was like really old. So she got a bit deaf. Like normally, if she was asleep or hiding or whatever under a car and the car engine started, she'd run off. But no, not this time. She was obviously in a deep sleep. She was going a little bit deaf, and my uncle squashed her. Absolutely. They were heartbroken. They were heartbroken. Sheba was like 18 or 19 years old. She was an old cat. And yeah, that's what happened. So what if Sebastian was hiding under a car and someone started their car? You know, and he's got his leg in the way or his head in the way, or, you know, how dangerous is it? But he's not going to realize how dangerous it is. But yeah, so it's good to have that context to that story. So we absolutely know. And the finishing off of the story. So the neighbour went over, knocked on the door. Katie wasn't in, so the neighbour went back home and never bothered going back. Like, I don't think the neighbour can blame himself. I probably wouldn't have gone back either. You know, I probably would have thought, oh, well, you know, if I see him again, I'll make a more concerted effort to, you know, speak to the parents. So Chris and Katie were not aware that Sebastian was going out and about hiding under people's cars. I would imagine they would have got cameras if they did. Like, there wasn't any they didn't have cameras. It was a safe neighborhood. They didn't have cameras until after Sebastian went missing. So I suspect if they knew Sebastian was going out and about, either in the afternoons when Katie was still at work or at night, they would have got cameras. They would have made very sure that Sebastian could not get out, or Sebastian wasn't left on his own, because, you know, it's potentially dangerous that he's hiding under cars. You know, going out for a walk in his neighborhood's fine. It's a safe neighborhood. He's 15 years old. But going hiding under cars, potentially problematic. What if Sebastian was hiding at the construction site that morning and he got a whole dump of, you know, tons and tons of rubble dumped on him? What if? What if he was hiding and he got squashed? What if he was hiding under one of the, you know, vehicles? We just don't know. There's so many potential issues that could have happened to him, because he clearly was somebody who was engaging in potentially risky behaviours, unbeknownst to his parents. Nobody knew. Nobody knew he was doing this. They knew that he liked hiding, like under beds and around walls and stuff like that, so he could like jump out and laugh. That's fine. Kids do that. What they didn't know was that he was out and about in his neighbourhood. By the time they found that out, it was too late. So many things could have happened to him. So in terms of the dogs, it's still a big question mark. What I would like to see, and I'm not an investigator, so I don't have any rights to this footage, but if I had the footage, what I'd want to do was track the path of every dog. So on the map, I'd have the camera, and then the time the dog appeared on the camera, the direction the dog went. I'd have little clips to show the demeanor of the dog, because not only is the direction the dog took important, it's also the demeanor of the dog. So was the dog just idly sniffing? Was the dog actively sniffing but not actually on a track? Was the dog on a track but then abruptly lost it? Was the dog not on a track and then abruptly got on a track? I want all of that information, and I'd have a different colour for every dog that I found. And I'd get, you know, I'd get a really good feel for where the dogs went. Let's say one dog went out and followed this path that we've kind of all come to know. Then where did it go? So is that on a camera? Then where did that dog go? So if another dog was started here, let's say was started here at this intersection, where did that dog go? We know what Max's track was. You know, we need to. I need to know if there were any consistencies between these dogs, even if they're only small tracks. Was there consistency? Like what? Without seeing that, and the most important thing for me would be the demeanor of the dogs. Because I know dogs, I can understand dogs' body language. I understand dogs better than I understand people. I'd like to see, and obviously these cameras are probably not going to be great quality. You're not going to be able to see the dog's facial expressions, but you'll be able to see the general demeanor. Like you could see Max, like with his head up, so you know he was air scenting, and then you see him like just taking off at a trot on a mission. So I'd like to do, if I was an investigator, that's where I would be focusing my energies. Just to see if there was consistency. However, there is potential that Sebastian was caught on a camera. So I want to play you this clip. This is interesting. Very interesting. Now, obviously, law enforcement have all the footage that SF has got. They've probably got more than SF has got. So SF isn't holding on to this, and it's something that law enforcement don't know. Law enforcement have probably had this information from, week one. But because they can't be sure that it was Sebastian, I would imagine that's why they haven't released it. So we're going to play this because this is very, very intriguing. And this is the first time we've heard potentially that Sebastian was seen. So no, this is nothing to do with the flashlights. This is nothing to do with the flashlights. This is a completely different instance. So listen to this. So he's talking about that law enforcement might be in the same situation, that they've got someone on a camera. There's no sound. Oh, dear God. Oh, it's done it again. And it's done it again. All right. Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Start this again. All right.
But I do.
All right. Can you hear that? I'll just play it from like here just so we can check the sound.
But I do. In the last week, I do believe that they.
Okay. So they found something on the footage that they've got. It's a person after midnight in the neighborhood, but they can't tell if it's Sebastian. He's not going to, he says he's in a minute, he says he's not going to start a rumor that Sebastian was definitely seen, but who else was it? If it wasn't Sebastian, who else was it? And he says law enforcement are probably in the same position, that they suspect it's Sebastian, but they don't quite know that it is. Therefore, they can't release the footage. So let's see.
They have something of him. Listen, I'll be honest with you. We have something from after midnight of a person we can't identify. I don't know if it's him. I'm not starting to remember, but so I think they might be in the same situation where there might be other cameras that we don't know about.
Can I ask, is this the so-called flashlights video, or is this something else?
This is something else.
Okay, so is it just an unidentified person walking past or through the property?
Yeah, it's a person that, but because they're wearing very dark clothing and because the light, it looks like, I don't know if you saw in the Riley Strain case, do you remember like under the bridge when there was people walking by, but it was so opaque, you could barely see the person. So it's like that, but it's clearly a person. There's no doubt about it, but there's no way you could identify who that person is. But based on the time and the place, it's like, there's only so many people it could be, really.
Yeah, it would. Especially with where that neighborhood is, it's a development.
Right.
Like there's no passing through that neighborhood to get somewhere else. If you're in that neighborhood, you're in that neighborhood to be there.
Yeah.
So it would have to be you would expect it to be somebody who lives there.
So if it's not Sebastian, who is it? Is the question. Because they do have someone else out there, which he comes on to in a second, but they know who that person is. So presumably law enforcement aren't completely sure it's Sebastian, or else they'd release the footage and say, we've got this image of him in the neighborhood. There's no reason why they wouldn't release it if they knew it was him. Fairy goodness, member for 24 months. You have got your OD badge. Well done. Well done. Thank you for being a member for 24 months. So, law enforcement aren't going to release something that isn't clearly Sebastian. But I would imagine that they're in the same position that SF's in, that, well, if it isn't Sebastian, who is it? There was no one else out there who hasn't been accounted for other than Sebastian. Yeah, they have Bobby's son and the dog walker, yeah.
Especially if they're out walking late at night. So
well, the quick follow-up I have to that is, did you see any unusual or notable vehicles in any of the
I do want to get to that in just a second. There's just one last thing I wanted to clarify with this video you're talking about, which I assume if it becomes relevant for the public to know, you would release it, right?
So not necessarily, because listen, I can bring that up and say, listen, this things that there's maybe some hope or something, but that's something that is for investigators, law enforcement, private investigators on the case. The public's not entitled to that. There's no reason to give that, because what happens is, look what happened look what happens whenever we release anything. They go to find out who these people are. They dox them. Look at the Green Hurdy person. I mean, geez,
Yeah, so you can't release anything these days, or else, oh no, Broken Goffdo, had to cut into a brick wall. Don't think the house will ever be clean. Oh no. Oh, brick dust is the worst. Oh no. I mean, look, if you released if SF released it and said this potentially Sebastian, people would be like, oh no, it's not. That's Chris, or that's the abductor, or that's this person and that person. They'd just go berserk with it. People wouldn't believe it was Sebastian, even if it was. If law enforcement released it, I think probably people would be exactly the same. They'd be like, oh, we don't believe it's Sebastian. Law enforcement are involved in some kind of cover-up. Just because it's ridiculous. Yeah, people twist things.
It puts that person's life in danger. So I can't do that. There's no way. I mean, there's been times when I've released footage when it's been good to release footage because it's like, hey, there's proof, and then people help. But then lately, this cast of characters in these cases, there is absolutely no way I'm going to let some of these people, be able to see that, because it puts the person in harm's way.
So
they'll be in that part of the neighborhood, knocking on people's doors, demanding things.
Yeah, I don't. And just to be clear, I think that that's not the way to go about things.
Without a doubt.
I mean, we've sat down and we've talked to parents of missing kids. We have talked to parents of murdered kids, and we've all the goal is to be respectful about it. You start that conversation over in writing. You send him over something, you're like, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this. Would you be available? And that's how we ended up talking with Tommy Booth's parents.
Yep.
Would never just go, like, I can find where they live. I'm not just going to go knock on their door like, hey.
Yeah, well, you might not, Lords. You might not. But a lot of people would. So, honestly, I think that is potentially like hopeful that he actually was out there. And maybe that's why law enforcement have continued to say that he was last seen on the 26th. That it's why it says on the Amber Alert that he was last seen on the 26th. Maybe it's why the news were reporting on that first day that he was seen walking out of his door after midnight. Now, that's not true. No one actually physically saw him walking out of his door. But maybe there's a small miscommunication there. I played the clip the other day in a video. I'll play it again. Here. It's this one. Oh, yeah. Hold on. Oh, I'll have to stop sharing. Just a second. I'll have to reshare it. All right. All right, this is from my channel from like 2 days ago. And there was a clip. Listen to this. This is from like the first 24 hours. Okay, first, this is from WKRN.com. And someone posted this on Twitter with the question, who was it who saw Sebastian walking away from his house? Good question. Let's listen.
Like you said, he has been missing for over 24 hours, as they last seen him walking out of his house around midnight. Now,
well, last seen walking out of his house around midnight. Now, he wasn't seen walking out of his house, but there might be truth in that, but just a slight miscommunication. That maybe law enforcement told the media, you know, some, I don't know, you know, behind the scenes said, we believed he walked out of his house after midnight. And law enforcement might totally believe the parents' story of what happened, like all the parents, because they do believe they have Sebastian in the neighborhood on his own, wandering about on the 26th, in the early hours of the 26th. There may be more footage. There may be, you know, the FBI may have been able to clean up footage and seen him. You know, seen someone that they believe to be Sebastian. So there's a reason why. There's a reason why law enforcement have continued right from day one, but still continue to believe that Sebastian walked out of that house on his own. There is no criminal investigation. There is, Eric Craddock has said it multiple times, there is no evidence of foul play. So if law enforcement do have somebody on their footage somewhere in that neighborhood, team that with potential tracks that dogs have found, you know, a track here, a track there, a track there. Maybe not one consistent line, but a track here, a track there, a track there. Team that with potential footage. Team that with they've accounted for everyone else who was in that neighborhood. There's a dog walker that SF mentions that was seen on camera. That person's been accounted for. Bobby's son was out there at some point. He's been accounted for. All the vehicles that were in that neighborhood in the night have been accounted for. The Uber at 3:30, that was accounted for early doors. The vehicle that went into the neighborhood at 2:58, that's been accounted for. They know who that person was. Every single movement of that neighborhood that can be seen has been accounted for. So if there's just one person who is wearing dark clothes, and remember, Sebastian was wearing all black, wearing dark clothes, who's just caught just a little bit on camera, that has to be Sebastian. That has to be the conclusion, that has to be Sebastian. Also, team with, let's take this full circle to go right to the beginning of the live stream. Team this with, there's no evidence that the parents weren't where they said they were. We've got evidence that Chris was in Memphis or at his RV park, and then he went to work. There's evidence that Seth was at the prison or the jail. There's evidence from the vehicles that can be gained to know exactly where those vehicles were, when they stopped and started and all that stuff. There's evidence from the phones. As SF even mentioned, an Apple Watch. So they know, you know, if somebody's wearing an Apple Watch while they're asleep, they know what their heart rate is. There's so much information that can be gleaned digitally. Katie was caught on camera. Katie was caught on camera leaving the house when she was looking for Sebastian, and they're able to track Katie's movements in that neighborhood. You know, Katie's vehicle is caught on various cameras in that immediate neighborhood. There's no way that Katie could have left her house and dropped a body off and not be seen. And she'd have to be pretty cool. You'd have to be a master criminal to be that cool that you've already called the cops. The cops are on the way, and then you decide to go and hide a body. There's so much digital forensics that can be gained from those 6 hours that leads you to believe that the parents all were where they said they were. And also, no one else entered that neighborhood either on foot or in a vehicle that has been seen on surveillance that has not been accounted for. There's no one, absolutely no one, who was around and about that neighborhood that has not been accounted for, except for perhaps that one person at some time after midnight in the neighborhood wandering around, and then he's eventually lost on that particular shot. He's lost and is never seen again. So it doesn't pop up somewhere else, because that's the other important thing. Does that person pop up somewhere else on a different camera? Well, maybe law enforcement do have more cameras, more camera angles, more cleaner footage than SF has. Maybe law enforcement do have a potential path for that person. So there's a reason why law enforcement have never wavered from he was last seen the 26th of February, and it's never been upgraded to a criminal investigation. And Eric Craddock has consistently said there is no evidence of foul play. So things are starting slowly to fall into place. And the people who are following these absolute nonsense spreaders, who've already made up their mind that this person's guilty or that person's guilty, and they've dug themselves into one theory, well, I'm sorry, you're a really terrible investigator. Do not give up your day job. Do not give up your day job, because you would be an absolutely rubbish investigator or evidence collector of any shape or form. Confirmation bias has no place at all in any case of any missing person. Confirmation bias leads you down a path that you then can't return from without, backtracking and saying, I was wrong. Now, I can easily say that. If I follow a particular path and then I find out there's more evidence or new evidence, something else comes out that negates what I've previously said, I'll absolutely backtrack and say, that was wrong. This is the new evidence. Because I'm not wedded to any one theory, because I'm as interested in the evidence that does not support a particular theory than just collecting evidence that does. It's easy to collect all the evidence that fits your confirmation bias. That's easy. That's lazy. That's really lazy. Really lazy. And that's what Low Lodge has done. Unfortunately, Low Lodge has over 600,000 subscribers, and he's got the backing of the Green Team. So Low Lodge now has a vested interest to maintain that theory, as do all the other people who've been bigged up by people associated with the Green Team. They've got a vested interest now to maintain that theory, even if they have doubts, even if they have nagging doubts, even if they know deep down that what they're saying is untrue. They still have a vested interest to maintain that theory, whether it's right or wrong. Hand on heart, where is he? I have no idea. But I think he's close. I think my personal opinion is that he has either fallen in somewhere, down somewhere, or has been killed by having rubble dumped on him. There's various explanations about why he could have, not come home. Where he is, I don't know, but I believe he's close. I do. I believe he's close. That's my opinion. Now, is there the possibility that while he was out there, he did meet someone who has abducted him? Absolutely. And if that's the case, I don't believe it's someone from the immediate neighborhood. I don't believe it's anyone connected to the parents. It would have to be away from the neighborhood. So, as we've talked about previously, if he was abducted, let me just make this screen bigger. If he was abducted, he can't have been abducted this way. So this is his house here. Can't be abducted this way because he'd be caught on cameras. Camera there, there's a camera near here, there's a couple of cameras here. Right, he'd have been caught. Whatever vehicle he was abducted by would have been caught coming out of here. And I'm sure there's numerous cameras along Long Hollow. Coming out of here, this is the construction site development. This is Willow Bend. There's cameras down here. Right? One of the houses down here have been caught on the dispatch audio saying that they'd seen Sebastian in their neighborhood. They'd seen Sebastian, they recognized him, but they hadn't seen him recently. So someone else, not connected to the neighbor on Stafford, someone else had seen him over here. Anyhow, if he'd been abducted this way and then gone on to Long Hollow, he'd have been caught on cameras. The vehicle would have been caught on cameras. So if he was abducted He either had to be abducted on foot and taken off this way somewhere, or in a vehicle off this way somewhere, because there is a drivable route from Ward Lane down here. It doesn't look drivable, but apparently it is. And to the backside of the cemetery. That is drivable. It would have to have been that way. That's why another thing I would like to know is, are there any cameras on Ward Lane? Ward Lane goes up to just a handful of properties, so it's like a dead end. So if you come up Ward Lane, you can't leave Ward Lane. You have to go back the way you came, by the looks of things, because Ward Lane just leads to various properties. There's no way you can get off Ward Lane without coming back this way. So I would like to know, are there any cameras on Ward Lane or cameras along here, this route? I would like to know if they were all checked, because we know all the neighbourhood cameras were. So is there a possibility of an abductor going from the construction site this way? So I'd like to know that all vehicles leaving Ward Lane were also accounted for. That's another thing I would like to know, because if you can account for all the vehicles leaving Ward Lane, then you've pretty much covered all the routes. You can pretty much rule out abduction, at least abduction in a vehicle. If you can rule out any vehicle coming into and leaving Ward Lane during that night, you can pretty much rule out abduction. Of course, you could have somebody who's taken him into their house and then has murdered him and then has removed his body at a later date. Absolutely. I mean, horrific things like that do happen. Absolutely. But what I think you would be able to rule out, as much as you can rule anything out, is abduction in a vehicle, like taking him out of the area in a vehicle. What's my opinion regarding Bullhorn Betty? I don't talk about that woman. So yeah, I think things are slowly coming together. Because remember, you know, the absence of evidence is very important. People say, oh, we've got nothing. Well, actually, we've got lots, but it's the absence of evidence that's important. The absence of evidence tells us that there's nothing untoward that the parents did. There's nothing untoward that any of the immediate neighbours did. There's nothing untoward that can be seen, at least, on any footage. We know absolutely that no strange vehicles came into the neighbourhood, either by this route or this route in the night, that haven't been accounted for. We know that there were a couple of people seen on surveillance who have been accounted for. But we also know there's someone seen on surveillance who hasn't been accounted for. So who is that person? Was that Sebastian? So there's a lot we have. What we don't have is any indicator as to where Sebastian went. Sebastian was out there. Where did he go? Where did he go? Because the search efforts, if you look at the maps that have been released, were shown by Ken Widener, and then Stephen Crabtree's been showing some of the maps as well. They seem to have focused, like this is the official search party, seem to have focused in this area, like have gone west. And I think that's probably because it's flatter ground. So they've kind of assumed that Sebastian may have, if he's walked away, if he's walked off in a route that's relatively easy. So he's gone off on flatter ground. There's been searches down here, like some of the caves. have been searched down here. Law enforcement have searched down along here. What hasn't been searched, I mean, this is according to Stephen Crabtree, and Stephen himself says he's not sure whether this has now been searched, but certainly in the early days of the investigation, the man who owns this land in this area, so to east of the school, this is a school here, this man who owns this acreage, like 500 acres, was not allowing searchers on his land, which is a problem to me. Talked about it yesterday. It's a problem to me. Now, whether he has allowed law enforcement on since, I don't know. But a lot of that is wooded. But there's areas there which, you know, it's fields, maybe outbuildings. There's like loads of places where, you know, a kid would go and hide. And it's only just to the east of the school. It's only like over the road from the school. I've always fancied he went north, always. Now, I know that the terrain is, you know, really bad, like to the north. Certainly more difficult terrain, you know, than some of the places. But if you're totally lost and you're just wandering along, once you get turned around and you get stuck in an area, like the old lady Paulette from Belgium, who fell down a hill and then got stuck in a bramble bush and died and was only found 2 years later, that we talked about earlier in this live stream. How do we know that Sebastian didn't wander off in this direction, like completely lost, like turned around, ended up walking up a hill, fell down and fell into, you know, a hole, a cave, into brambles, and he's still there? Because once you turn around, you're lost, you get desperate. So you just keep walking, however precarious it is. Look at Jay Slater, the young man who died in Tenerife in the summer. Look at where he ended up. I mean, unbelievably dangerous where he ended up, because he just kept walking. Instead of turning back, he just kept walking. And you get to a point where, you know, it's the point of no return. It's just as dangerous to turn back as it is to carry on. And unfortunately, Jay Slater ended his life by falling off a massive ravine. It happens. It absolutely happens. Yeah, panic. You start panicking. So you end up in a location where no one would expect you to be. No one was expect you to be. Jay Slater think he was still high. He probably was. There probably was substances on board, yeah. So he probably had this, you know, sense of invincibility, perhaps. But Jay, you know, Jay was only 19. He's only 4 years older than Sebastian. So he could easily have got into a location that no one would expect him to be. And I understand how much more difficult this area is to search than some of these other areas, but it's... I do believe he's here. I do. In my heart of hearts, I believe he's here. Somewhere. I do. But what happened to him, I don't know. I think maybe some unfortunate event. I think that construction site is the key as to what direction he went in. And, you know, one of my fears is he's still actually at the construction site. That is one of my fears, that he's still there. Yeah, there's cave systems, there's sinkholes, there's like these big drops that if you were just walking along, you'd just fall in, especially at night. You'd just fall in. Believe Sebastian is buried under a ton of rubble. Yeah, I mean, it could easily be that, Kate. It could easily be that. Since we know that the construction site wasn't shut down, you know, you'd think that that was completely unbelievable, that no way could a 15-year-old man, like 5'5", 120 pounds, not like it's a little dog that you might miss. You know, how could you miss? But easily, because if he's hiding under something, and then these, you know, heavy loaders come and they just dump literally tons of rubble, they're not looking, they're just dumping it in that particular location. What if they dump the rubble on him and he's just been squashed? And what if he's still there? The fact that that construction site was not closed down is probably the worst thing, has probably taken the answers away that we could have had very early on in this case. The fact that that construction site was not closed down, it's taken evidence away, it's taken scent away, like the movement of the earth means that, of course, the dogs are not going to be able to get a scent. When earth has been moved, how are dogs going to be able to get a scent when earth has been moved? So, absolutely crazy that that wasn't closed down, at least for a day. And that could well be the answer. It could well be the answer. But if he's not at the construction site, then I think he's close. And I think he's in the woods. And I think he got turned around. He's panicked. He's tried to, you know, find his way home. And he's fallen into a hole, a crevice, a cave. And it's probably a place where you wouldn't expect him to be. But still reasonably close. That's in my heart of hearts what I think. But is there other alternatives? Yes. But the more we learn, the more we can rule out. It has opened up possibilities. It absolutely has. The fact that that construction site was not closed down is insane to me. Insane. Somebody could buy a house. I mean, this is horrible to think, but somebody could buy a house on that site and Sebastian's body could be underneath that house and they would never know. They would never know. And once you've messed around with the earth so much, all evidence is lost. So things are coming together. Things are coming together. And remember, it's not the fact it's not the fact that we have nothing. We have a lot, but it's not the kind of stuff that's earth-shattering. It's not the kind of stuff that you would say, yes, that's it. It's lots of little things that you've got to piece together. And you only have that capacity to piece those things together if you're open-minded in the first place. Barefoot, though, I have a problem with that part. That's why I think he did have a pair of shoes. I've said this all along. I think he had a pair of shoes that his parents weren't aware of. And law enforcement have never confirmed that Sebastian was barefoot. If you listen to what they say we were told that Sebastian was barefoot. They've never said Sebastian was barefoot. They've said possibly. They've said they were told that. I think he had a pair of shoes that his parents weren't aware of. I think he was going out and about frequently. I think he had an old pair of shoes that he used to use when he went out so that his parents couldn't say, why are your shoes dirty? That he was hiding in his room. Maybe the thud that Katie heard was Sebastian getting his shoes out from wherever he'd hidden them. How do we know? How do we know that that wasn't Sebastian getting his shoes out from his little hidey place? Because if he's good at hiding himself, he's also good at hiding stuff. Look, teenagers are very good at hiding stuff from their parents. He's 15. He wasn't 5. He wasn't 3. He wasn't 10. He was 15. He was nearly a man. So he probably had secrets. He had things. He had stuff that he thought, things that he did that his parents weren't aware of. And that's not wrong at 15 because he's growing up. However, unfortunately, because maybe Sebastian didn't have a very good sense of danger, this is where we are. This is where we are. Nanny of 10. Welcome to the Secret Agents Club. Although it says you're an OG, so I guess you're a returning member. But thank you so much for rejoining. Yeah, highly intelligent. Highly intelligent. So, you know, clued in, knows how to work a room, knows how to work a situation, knows how to lie. But doesn't have the social skills and probably doesn't have the cognitive capacity quite yet to understand just how dangerous certain situations were. So things like hiding under cars, very dangerous. Hiding on a construction site where there's people working, very dangerous. Maybe that's what Sebastian was lacking. Yeah, great chess player. So, yeah, can think ahead. Absolutely. Can think ahead. Can probably think moves ahead. So I think he had a pair of shoes hidden. And when he went out, he wore those shoes. We'll never know unless we find him. How far can cadaver dogs smell through the earth, loads of dirt that was accidentally dumped on him? Oh, quite a ways. It depends on the earth. So if it's earth, like actual earth, that's porous. So you can be buried 6 foot, 10 foot, even further down, and they'll still alert. But it also depends on the type of cadaver dog. So you have to have a specialist dog to sniff out bones, like bones that have been there for a long time. That's a specialist dog. So a cadaver dog is sniffing the scent of recent death. So the scent of decomposition. So cadaverine, putrescine, etc. The scent of death. But once that body skeletonizes, that scent has dissipated. That scent has gone. I mean, there probably will still be some remnants of it, but possibly, if buried underground, not strong enough for that dog to alert. So once a body is skeletonized and is buried deep underground, you are going to have to get a specialist dog, and there's still the potential that the body would be missed. The deeper the body and the longer it's been there, the more specialist that dog would need to be. I mean, there are dogs that assist in archaeological digs that are specifically trained to sniff out bone, like long dead bones, like dry bones, not bones with marrow in, because any dog can sniff that out. But long dead bones, they're very dry. So yeah, the longer it's been there, the more and the deeper it is, the less chance a dog would be useful in locating it. Gravel. You see, the thing with gravel beds in. Gravel beds in. So the more porous a surface, or the more porous, you know, the depth, the easier it will be for the dog to locate. But if you've got, you know, very, very compacted layers upon layers of gravel, then concrete, then a house, you'd have to have a very, very, very good dog, and I would imagine that the average dog, even a specialist dog, wouldn't find that body. There probably is a dog out there that's absolutely spectacular, that has proven itself in those kind of circumstances. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it would have to be a very, very highly specialized dog. You know, if you've got, let's say, 10 foot of gravel, highly compacted, then you've got concrete, you've got the drainage system, you've got everything that they put in under the foundations of a house. You've got so many obstacles there to that scent making its way to the surface. So if he's under a house, I don't think he'll ever be found, because it's not like you can use. There's no technology that you could use. You'd literally have to start digging up areas of that house. Like, you can use ground penetrating radar on the areas that are still construction site. You can run dogs on areas that are still that construction site. A dog trained to search debris like after an earthquake. You see, the thing is, though, when it's an earthquake, you've got lots of air pockets. You've got lots of places where that scent can seep. Even if it's like 10 feet of rubble, you know, it's usually big chunks. It's not fine gravel. The finer the gravel and the more compact it is, the less air there is to, you know, make its way to the surface and bring that scent up with it. And if you've got multiple surfaces compacted on top of each other, you've got so many obstacles in the way. But absolutely, if there's loose rubble, if there's piles of loose rubble still there, and Sebastian's under one of them, then absolutely run a dog. Absolutely, a dog could be useful in that instance. What I'm talking about is, let's say, 10 foot under, with layers and layers and layers of compacted gravel, drainage, whatever else is under a house. You've got so much to compete with that scent making its way back to the surface. But let's just hope that that isn't the case, because if that is the case, I don't think we'll ever get an answer. I don't think we'll ever get an answer. But if he's still on that construction site and he's somewhere maybe that we don't expect, or he's close by the construction site, then I think there is a very good chance that he will be found. But it will take probably specialist equipment or, you know, dedication to find him, and you know, for people to think outside of the box as to where to go, because it might well be in a location that no one expects. So, all right, guys, that's what I wanted to talk about. So the Law Lodge, it's worth a listen. There's a lot more to it. It was respectful. There was a lot of information presented. I don't think it's going to change Law Lodge's mind, because, you know, he's embedded into his theory, and construction, you know, the construction of that confirmation bias, I think, has been pretty complete for him. I hope he's intelligent enough and he's man enough to say, oh yeah, what SF was saying makes absolute sense, and I'm going to explore that avenue. I'm not just going to sit with my confirmation bias, you know, the motive that he's invented, because there's absolutely no evidence to support the theory that he's claiming, and there's actually lots of evidence to refute it. Pinchot's video is worth a look. I will look at Pinchot's video. I will absolutely look at Pinchot's video. I will do it this afternoon, and if I think it's interesting, I will probably live stream it. What's your channel called, Pinch? Is Pinchot still in the room? Is Pinchot still in the room? Is your channel name, you like the name that you on the screen? Hold on, I can find it. Just give me a second. Don't know whether Pinchot is still in the room. Pinchot's greatest minds. Okay. Pinchot's greatest minds. Oh, got it. Here we are. Thought I would. Hold on, I have to reshare here. So, Pinchot Paxton's greatest minds. Videos. All right, Sebastian Rogers 3D flashlight reconstruction. Okay, 19 minutes. All right, I am going to go away and watch this, and I may review it. I may review it to you all. I don't know yet. So, yeah, I've been looking forward to this. I have told Pinchot I'm looking forward to seeing this 3D reconstruction. So I will give it my fairest of considerations. I am open-minded. So leave it with me. That's going to be 19 minutes well spent. So thank you, Pinchot, for doing this. And even if, I'm going to subscribe to you, even if I don't agree with you, it's, you know, even if I don't agree with you, I'm entitled to my opinion, you're entitled to yours. But if this model is convincing, then I will say it is. I will absolutely say it is. So there's that. All right, guys, thank you for joining me. Thank you all. Thank you, mods, as always. Did I have any donations? I don't know if I did. Don't remember doing. But anyway, thank you. Thank you anyway, if I did. If I if I did. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. I'm off to watch Pinchot's reconstruction. Bye, guys.